Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Whenever we went to holiday in Holland, it was just like night and day. It was so progressive, and France was so backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was really cool to just
conservative.
go there and they're like, things work and
Yeah.
people are friendly and like, well, the French are pretty friendly, but I mean, it was
Yeah.
a big difference going to Holland. So.
Oh, well, I've been to France once, but not for any length of time. Just long enough to think I wouldn't mind coming back for another visit,
Yeah. Oh, beautiful country for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just astonishing.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you get here. How you end up fetching up in Australia? What's the story?
Well, I studied in Aberdeen in Scotland. I'm brought up in Scotland for the most part, and I was actually born in England, but I'm going all the way back. And but I have a Scottish accent. I've lived most of my life there, and I moved to England and kind of did my first job there. Built some money and went traveling, and then I just I think that's where I picked up the sort of photography bug.
Right.
I think it's just spawned from a love of travel.
Yeah.
And then spent a year in Australia.
When was that?
That was in 2003, 2004.
Oh, okay.
And loved it, and then left because my visa was up, and then spent the next few years kind of trying to get back. So it took me a couple of years to get back.
Were you did you go back to Scotland?
So I went back to London for a year, worked there in media.
Okay. What sort of stuff did you do in the media?
Very boring, sort of engineering. So I'm from an engineering background. I studied engineering, and so I worked for a media hire company in Soho in London. So it was in the right spot and doing some They were doing interesting things. I was servicing their machines.
What kind of engineering background are you?
I'm electronic and communications. So.
And you were doing what sort of stuff were you working on for them? What kind of gear?
Just like the video editing stuff. So just calibrating it and maintaining it, and learning some of that side of the business.
And did you come into this with an engineering qualification of some description, degree, or?
I have an engineering degree. So I lived in Aberdeen for 4 years where I studied, and then.
So that would have been the late '90s.
Yeah. So my first job. So I qualified in 2001. I graduated, and then worked effectively for an engineering company, and had some trips overseas with it. I was rotating on and off, working in Russia.
Oh, okay.
Which was really interesting, beautiful as well.
Yeah.
And that gave me some money to go traveling. So
So when does photography come into this? Story?
So I was working in Russia, earned a decent amount of money. Went traveling, didn't work for the next 8-9 months.
And that was this. This was when?
This is 2003 was the start of my travel. So I worked for a couple of years, and then and that's basically what spawned the interest. I traveled with a friend from university. He was getting into photography, and there's just a competitive nature between the two of us. It was like a love-hate relationship, really good mates, but like always wanted to beat each other at whatever we did.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was into photography. I was into photography as well, and on the trip through Asia, we're traveling together. We would try and outdo each other, and we kind of learned together a bit.
What when you were taking photographs, what kind of stuff was catching your eye? What did you find yourself wanting to photograph?
So I read a book by Richard Dyanson. Is that right? The travel photography book. It's just like it's the Bible. I think it's been around for quite a long time. Very good book, and I read that, and I learned about composition, and I really didn't know what I was doing on the camera side of things, and I just so I was just exploring composition, and traveling through Asia. It was all very foreign to me. So temples, people. So just a variety, not necessarily landscapes. Some landscapes in there, but they weren't hugely successful. but just really exploring and learning from that. And it was with a film camera as well for the most part.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was my other question.
So,
what was that first camera?
It was some old Canon film camera. I'm not sure even. My father gave me it, and then I also had like a few megapixel digital camera as well at some point, and so between the two of them, but for the majority it was the film camera, and I'd get them developed on the way.
Yeah.
Review them. I had a little portfolio. I kept just of these 4x6 prints.
Yeah.
And then I would keep renewing for the best ones as far as I saw, and I would actually hand it out to people I was traveling with. They would give me feedback, what they liked, and I learned a lot from that, and just trying to create this better portfolio all the time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach.
Yeah,
very. You've got yourself a feedback loop there.
Yeah, and it was to outdo my friend and to impress my travel companions, and so it was cool.
And so you've gone through Asia, and this is what, like 2003?
2003, half a year in Asia. Then I arrived in Australia.
And when you got to Australia, were you still photographing intensively?
Yeah, I probably not as much. So Australia for a year, and then back to London, and really I wasn't photographing as much as I had when I travelled. I was still into it, but nothing like what I had done. I then went from London after a year and working for the media company to New Zealand. So I had my working holiday visa there as well. Great. So I actually worked for New Zealand Police there. I had a contract with them and did engineering. And the flatmate I lived with had an interest in photography. So between us again, we kind of egged each other on, and he loved the technical stuff. So he told me how to do the technical stuff. Really, I find it a very dry topic. Reading all that technical stuff, or at least I did then. Between us, we kind of figured out how to shoot manual, how to use filters. We travelled together around the South Island.
Were you still using film at this stage?
No, I was
on
actually bought my first digital SLR in New Zealand. It was a 350D.
Right.
So we travelled the South Island together, and travelled the North Island, and that kind of reignited my passion, I guess.
And was that when you began to think of yourself as a landscape photographer, or and I'm anticipating that if you had to describe yourself as a photographer, you would.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Although, I mean, if you're looking at your work, obviously you're covering a lot of other areas, and you're plainly attracted to other things too. But the landscape stuff shows,
landscape,
I suppose, the intensity.
Yeah. So I actually thought, okay, well, there's a business opportunity here for youth stock photography. So I actually thought, well, for a while I sort of explored that avenue, and start taking photos of youth culture. So I just didn't think it was very well represented, or represented well.
When you say youth culture, what sort of thing? Things
people in nightclubs, DJing, hip hop, dancing, break dancing, skateboarding. So I briefly sort of started taking photos of that as well, and then started setting up a website for that. I had my own website as well, and then I started another website with this guy I live with. So it was just early days, and not doing anything with it really, but just taking photos and putting them online. I don't think there was, it wasn't as saturated as it is now, and I definitely, I guess I saw myself as being half decent, and thought I'd share it on the internet.
And so you start doing that, and are you still kind of earning a crust from your engineering background, or are you when you're at this stage, when you're in New Zealand? You have that contract with the police.
Just to be completely open, I still earn my crust from engineering.
Right. Yeah. So but photography is the passion of your life,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent thousands of hours, thousands, and just can't count them. Every for a very long time, and not so much recently, but for a very long time, it was every single spare moment I had, and I'd be out photographing, photoshopping when I couldn't go out, and then building a business and teaching on the weekends, and all my holidays were taken up by going out taking photos. So it was all consuming for several years. And, and that was mostly in Australia.
And that was in Australia.
Yeah.
So you've discovered that it's become a passion for you, such that it really eclipses almost everything else in your life.
Yeah.
And you're still earning a living, kind of mix between it, and you're getting a little bit of money from your photography.
Yeah. So I built up to where I was earning decent money before I went to France. I was so this was 4 or 5 years ago now. So I was teaching a lot, teaching every other weekend, teaching groups of photographers. I was then teaching Photoshop, at different levels. I was doing some weekend trips away with people. So I was building it, and then moved to France, and I had all the marketing. I had a lot of momentum there. I moved to France, and kind of all just kind of died out. And I think that was just because I changed my job. I had it was me and my wife, so didn't know anyone else, so there was kind of a dependency there. And we
had you moved to France for work?
Yeah. So I got offered a job there and moved, and moved with the mindset of fantastic for travel opportunities and photography. And it was, just the travel over there. It's pretty amazing. So now I'm kind of now I've been back to Australia for a year. I'm kind of building it up again. So
what do you see yourself, looking ahead the next few years? Where do you see yourself going?
So next year so there's a local photography group here. You're probably aware of the Focus Photographers. So next year I'm leading their education. So I'll be doing Photoshop courses for them. I'll try and organise some other things around that as well, maybe some trips or something like that. That's for next year. I've got a big trip coming up, so I'll be taking lots of photographs, and I want to build up my marketing again. So now my son is 15 months. It gives me more free time, but then I'm due to have another baby, which is going to be again very difficult. So so I want to build up the education, build up the marketing again, and then do trips overseas and get more involved again.
And the work that images you're selling, I noticed that the website's got promotions for your landscape work and whatnot. Is that your primary vector to sell work?
So I have just redesigned my website, and it's to try and make it more orientated to selling prints, because it wasn't before. I think it's more like a standard web shop now. So I also want to be sort of I want it to be affordable. I don't want this is people say fine art, but I mean it's a fine art process. What I do, I take a lot of care in what I do, but would I pay fine art prices? Probably not. And I want people to buy my prints, so I don't charge a lot of money for them, I don't think, in comparison. So I want to definitely build the print side of business. As far as exhibiting and things like that, I've done it previously. I might do some more in the future. There's two sides. I'll market to print buyers, and I'll also market to photographers.
Right,
as photography education and tours or whatever. Yeah.
So on the education side, you're doing presumably taking people who are enthusiasts and helping them refine their approach?
So there's capture and post-processing, yeah. So most of the time it's teaching people how to shoot manual and composition and things like that. And then on the Photoshop side, yes, everything from beginner through to, I guess what I also do is luminosity masks. So not a lot of people teach that, and so that's where that's part of my workflow. But I generally just teach my workflow, which includes luminosity masks and complex masking techniques in Photoshop.
So a person doing one of your courses gets exposed not only to the practical composition, that sort of thing, but they're also starting to think about their workflow and then the specific points along that.
Yeah, I mean, there's workflow from capture all the way through to the end product, so, and there's always a thought process on how to get from your mind's eye to what you see in your mind's eye, or at least you should be looking at something and saying, this is why I'm taking a photo of it, and then what's the process to get to that point where it's captured well, and then from there how to produce a finished product.
Well, I'm particularly interested in the way that photographers approach the task of picture taking, and for some that ends at at getting the composition in the photograph. Then they turn over the stuff to be dealt with by professionals for the final output side. You obviously do the whole process
through to print as well.
Yeah, through to print. Yeah. But starting at the front end of that process is taking photographs. You've now been doing it for a while. You've got this passion for landscape. I'm wondering, have you noticed in your own work any patterns that you find yourself drawn to particular types of, compositions even?
Yeah, absolutely. There's trends within photography, and it there's, from when I started, I think things have moved on. It's very in landscape photography, and even down to the way people capture things, all the way through to post-production techniques and coloring and things like that. But there's definitely, it's interesting, most of that is kind of on the post-production side, but there is, and it's maybe not so obvious, as composition. There's definitely trends in composition and different types of images that people are taking. And there's a lot of copycatting, being influenced by other photographers.
How do you feel about that topic?
I don't mind it. I think I always will take the hero shot. There's no point in going to a place and not taking that shot. And then I will try and be creative with it. Having said that, I went to Iceland and I hated it. I didn't hate it. I loved the country, but I was just so torn, just because everywhere I looked, I just had all these shots in my head that had already been taken, and I got very frustrated with that. So I really struggled to try and do something unique. So I think I managed to achieve that anyway in a lot of the photos I've taken. So.
Well, when you think about that, because to me, that's one of the great challenges of photography, is when you see other people's work and you can't unsee it, you can't, it forms part of your own idea of what works and doesn't and so forth. That's all I personally feel is fine too. But if you're going to be you, you've got to figure out, you got to look into it in a way, I think. So what, I'm intrigued by your story there. What you see basically all these pictures that have been taken. This is for me like an American going to the Southwest. All the pictures that have been taken, or Yosemite or something. All the pictures that have been taken are just this noise of no, you can't do that. That's just so and so. Or this is What did you do to kind of get around that, I suppose?
Well, I always think if you're going to take those photos that somebody else has taken and copy the composition, you have to put your own spin in it, or just do it better. So whenever I copy, well, I don't whenever I'm influenced by somebody's composition, and which I am. I mean, you go to a location and you look at all the angles and you're like, that's the angle. Unfortunately,
those are the angles. There are no other angles.
There's no way of getting around it. That composition works because everything within the scene falls into place in the right. Everything has its own space. Everything, the lines lead in.
Yep.
So unfortunately, there's no avoiding it sometimes. So I will make sure that I do a better job of that. I will try. Technically, I'll make it better. I'll finesse it more in Photoshop to how I want it. I might shoot it with different lights or different time of day. But then also, find my own angles and try and put some of my own style into it, whatever that is.
Yeah, and that I think it's difficult. I've talked to so many photographers over the years. It's difficult to kind of put into words some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a non-word thing. Some of that, but looking at an image and what works and what makes it particularly attractive.
Yeah.
The variability of weather is at least one thing that can change a composition, and you can get lucky there. Are you one to anticipate or specifically go after weather or wait for it?
Well, often it's dictated by just where I am and what time it is. It's something that you can't always plan. So it's just down to luck. And then if it's not really happening, then I probably won't post the photo. But there's some planning to it, and I will look at a popular spot and say, how do I do it differently? And that's. I have a photo with me, and it's an iceberg from the Iceberg Lagoon in Iceland, and it's an over shot, and for as far as I know, nobody has ever done that.
Oh, okay.
So that place has been shot to death.
Yeah.
So I look at it and say, okay, how can I put a spin on that? And that's purely, I'm just driven to do that because there's so many people out there doing fantastic photos, and really to call yourself a professional or to try and differentiate yourself, you just need to go that extra mile or think differently. So I think in the last few years I've definitely been pushing myself to try and be more creative in what I do, especially with the APAs. I think it's kind of necessary.
We'll have to have a look at that in a sec. With this, that reminds me that one thing I often ask photographers to do is to maybe choose an image of theirs that they could talk about a little bit, and maybe they just write up a few hundred words about that image for whatever reasons they think it justifies that effort. And I would hope that you could do that for us as well, and then that would be a standalone page on its own with the image, so that the focus is just on that image and what was going on, what drew you to it, or what came together and made it work, this kind of thing for you. So
I'm definitely trying, I have a lot of Pinterest boards and of countries, and it's a mixture of the best shots I've seen of that location and maybe not so good shots, but just different angles to say, okay, look, there's many alternatives, and then I use that sort of influence, and at least I get a lay of the land, and it's in my head. But I will go to a location and I'll walk around and just check all the angles and look through them in my camera. But unfortunately, sometimes it's only until you get back to your computer you say, okay, that was the best composition.
Yeah. Have you, and speaking of that, have you thought, damn it, and just gone back again?
Yeah, I do. I definitely shoot the same location a few times. For example, I'm as with most people, they've bought a drone.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the drone.
So and looking at the files, I've shot North Col twice, and I shot a number of photos from different angles, and I went, okay, that's the angle, I really like it. Looking at it, the image quality wasn't good enough for my liking.
What's the imager? What is the imaging device? You aren't actually hanging a camera?
No, it's just the 20 megapixel Sony sensor on the Phantom 4, and it just, the sensor's fantastic. It's just more a factor of the wind movement, so slightly it's a bit of motion blur, and it's a bit of a learning experience for me there. So I went back and shot it, and I'm not happy again. So I'm going to go back and shoot it again. But thankfully, it's not so far away.
And is it something that the technology is capable of doing for you? You think that is to say that you're going to be able to get the blur down to an acceptable level, or?
Oh, it's choosing the right day, the right conditions. I'll probably go out tomorrow and try it, and it's just a case of getting the right conditions, I think, and keeping an eye on the shutter speed and some of the technical things, maybe the depth of field. So I'm just not used to it, and also shooting directly down. Obviously, it's a different depth you need. It's not as there's not as much depth that you need.
So we have in terms of the compositions, you've got that particular perspective look. Aerial photography has. So
there's not a lot of depth unless you're shooting on an angle. If you're shooting straight down, obviously, there's only maybe 100 meters of depth. So it's just about getting the right aperture and right ISO and shutter speed.
And from the when it comes to the tools you're using for drone photography, what level of compositional control do you have?
I think it's pretty good.
You're using a display of.
I was using this. Now I've got an iPad. I mean, the brightness isn't anywhere near as good enough on this. Really, it's very difficult. So I've got an iPad. I'll be using a sunshade as well, I think. To differentiate yourself again, you need to do something different. And because drone photography is now awash on the internet.
I mean, it's just exploded, and there's so many out there.
Yeah. So there's only, well, in my mind's eye, there's only a few things you can do differently. But what I want to do is just do it well, and then I want to start experimenting. So there's some people are shooting some really cool stuff with. They're using the drone to light up the scene.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
Ruben,
using it for lighting rigs.
Yeah, Ruben. I've forgotten his surname, but amazing photography and just very interesting what he's doing.
Yeah, as an area in photography, it's kind of intriguing to me. Is that we think of say landscape photography being something you holding the camera, but here you're actually driving the camera. You're making all the decisions at a remove, and the feedback loops aren't the same physical ones of holding the camera and framing and putting it to your eye and so forth.
It does make it a bit more difficult.
Yeah, it seems to me in some ways like a kind of weird hybrid between photography and editing or something.
And funny, a lot of people rely on the just the fact that it's abstract to think that means it's good, and it does definitely add an element, but you need more than just something that's abstract. So
people get some quite beautiful images that way that are beautiful abstracts.
But this is a boring scene otherwise, a beach, but if you shoot from above it becomes more interesting. But still, is it great? Is it
depends on your day and what you got to.
Well, is it going to
the distribution of?
Is it just going to be a wash? Is it going to is it going to stand above the rest? And probably not, unless you do something interesting with it. So, yeah.
So do you see that drone photography breaking out of this look down angle? Do you see it ever kind of camera coming up here and flying over Half Dome and going along the face? And
it needs to. You need to do something cool with it.
It would seem to me that would be the most exciting thing is the drone as tripod. You just put it. You can get your camera up into and you can do stuff that that wouldn't really be practical otherwise.
Well, I'm off to Germany so I leave a week on Monday, and I've got a week in Germany before we head to the UK, and there's a castle there, and it's just a beautiful castle, and I've been there before, and just I just thought, God, I can't get the composition right. I just need to be 3-4 meters up here, and then I can get away from all the trees and anything obscuring it, and I just couldn't do it, but I can do
now
it with
perhaps
the drone.
with the drone, so it does.
It doesn't need to be you'd still think that's shot from the ground.
Yes,
but it just gives you enough height to get away from any obstruction. So
Have you started teaching people how to do drone photography yet?
No, I'm definitely
you need
not.
To. You're still.
I'm still learning.
Still learning it yourself. Yeah.
And I need to get sort out certification and all that. I mean, I have.
Oh yes, yeah. And then there's all the technical and legal side of it.
Yeah. So definitely, and it can be restrictive, that legal side, but obviously it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And you just, I mean, it's going to be heavily regulated soon, and it has to be, because people are just.
Oh yeah, because people.
Unfortunately, we can't trust people. And they'll ruin it for everyone. So.
Yeah. Which is inevitable, but right now it's in that kind of crazy cowboy sort of stage.
Quick, get out and photograph before it's banned.
Yeah. Well, I can see it. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out as a genre, and then when it. I think it'll make a transition in my mind anyway, for whatever matters, when it becomes photography rather than drones.
Yeah? You think it's a different
In other
thing?
words, when you stop thinking about it being a drone that took the picture, and that's a drone picture,
that's
and you start thinking about it as a photograph.
Yeah. So like, you mean a separation like a composite or single capture? Yeah. You think it would be another thing?
So
I mean, there's definitely a fashion of aerial photography, and drones just add to that. But I mean, shot from a helicopter traditionally, but
which used to be stupidly expensive, and now you at least can put yourself into that position. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with it. For yourself, when you said you're heading off on a trip. Soon.
So,
and where's that going to be? And
so I've got a week in Germany. And just because we're flying with Lufthansa for a round the world ticket.
Oh, okay.
I love Germany as well. So we're going to Rottenburg ob der Tauber, which is some medieval old village, so I'll take some photos there. And then I've got a month in the UK. So I've got a few photography spots kind of I'd like to get to, hopefully I can. But obviously visiting family as well, which makes it difficult. And then I've got 2 weeks in the US.
Right.
So
where will you go there?
Flying to San Fran and out of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So likely just do the coast road. Unfortunately, I mean it's not unfortunate, but
I always go on that every time I visit.
But I prefer, obviously Yosemite and Death Valley and all of that. But maybe not so good for the wife and kids. So.
It'd be a bit more challenging. Yeah, that's true.
So. But there's a couple of stops along there I'd love. Where are you from?
I'm from Southern California.
Cool.
So
is that
coast,
further south than Los Angeles,
and those places. I'm sorry?
Further south than Los Angeles?
Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara, so kind of north, So we'll drive past that, and is it Monterey and
Yep. Going up the coast
French
road
names.
from that's fantastic.
It's supposed to be beautiful there.
Oh yeah, it really. Have you not done that road yet?
I've only been to Texas in the US, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, Texas is quite different from California.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
I was working as well. So,
Oh yeah. So the Australian landscape, as somebody, and I guess you with your own background too, we come from landscapes anyway that are more, got more topographical stuff going on, and the Australian landscape doesn't have nearly as many spectacular things poking up out of the ground. It's a more horizontal landscape.
The Blue Mountains, you go there and you look down. I mean, I find that bizarre. It's built on top, obviously, but they're not mountains, It's,
there's more sort of hills.
A lot of mountains that are hills.
How do you find the Australian landscape? Have you kind of got a feel for it, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the northern beaches just for the seascape photography, and it is reasonably dramatic, and especially for being in a city. There's lots of photography opportunities, and but I think my wife said you should go away for a week before the baby comes, the next baby, and I'm like, okay, where would I go? And I'm like, I need dramatic. Really, I want something to impress. I don't want to just do something ordinary. And you're looking at like Tassie, obviously, is just as extraordinary as it gets. and it is just an amazing place. But yeah, you feel like you have to travel far to get some of these spectacular places. But then again, you go to the Blue Mountains and the canyon networks there are just unbelievable.
You get down in there and get some. I haven't
but
had
they're just
that.
not
I haven't ever
accessible.
gone shooting down there, but see some of the light you see people get. Particularly where you get steep canyons.
Claustral Canyon, yeah. So I went down there. That was my first canyon experience. Was Claustral Canyon, and it took us, was it 15 hours? It was just like. It was. We went in at 7 in the morning, got out like 1 in the morning.
Oh wow!
Then the next day, it was hard work.
Yeah.
And dangerous as well. So, but yeah, no, I definitely love Australia, and I definitely want to shoot more of it. I just need to pick and choose where I shoot. So,
do you have? I suppose it's a kind of a cliche, but do you have favorite times of day to shoot, or favorite seasons to shoot?
I like winter because I don't have to get up so early. I really don't like getting up early in the morning. I'm no good at it. So I tend not to shoot in the weekends or in the mornings at all. Just because of that. It just ruins me for the rest of the day. Yeah. If I'm on a trip, then I will do it every day because it's a limited opportunity in a place that I might never get to go to. But here I just don't bother. I do like early mornings for shooting into the sun because obviously on the East Coast you kind of have to do that. I think adds another element. I like the sort of dynamic, foreground that's lit up, or so I prefer winter. I like obviously clouds. I like moody as well. I think a lot of my photography is reasonably moody, so I tend to go. I like cloudy days, and I don't mind that.
Bit of precipitation.
Going on. Something interesting. A lot of the time you get up for sunrise here, and it's just a plain sky. Yeah. And it's just like, why bother? So unless you can obviously still do interesting things, but
a third of the frame is.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's why having a drone gives you some options.
To play around.
Yeah, and you can still explore compositions and do something kind of cool, and not have a wasted trip. So, So
the drone's going to go with you on your trip to Europe and the States and whatnot.
So my family, which is the wife, son, drone, and camera. So it's unfortunate. All is my hand luggage, and I'm sure it's the same for you. Is just camera gear.
Always a lot of very heavy.
Iceland. It was I think it was 25 kilos of hand luggage, and you just pretend. If you pretend it's light, you kind of don't get asked questions. So I had 3 cameras in there, underwater housing.
Man.
3 or 4 lenses. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, especially you throw in the housing, now you have the bulk and the weight. Yikes. So it's a challenge, but it's still a bit easier than film days.
Yeah, I'm sure, and bulky tripods as well, and But this time I'm traveling reasonably light as far as luggage. It's one season, the winter, so don't need to plan too much. Plus going to the US, I'll probably stock up on a few things, and I guess my camera gear has kind of shrunk down a lot as well.
I had a look on your blog and saw that you'd had a dalliance with Sony, and then you'd come back to the Canon gear. Yeah,
so I had 5D Mark II, 5D Mark III, Sony, and I just wasn't happy with Sony, so I'm still with the bulky DSLR, and I'm happy with that. I the tendency to swap all the time and to chase these marginal increments of technology is just a waste.
So you've
to some degree. I mean, obviously there's limitations with your gear, but
Well, at this point, I think the pixel peeping side of it leaves me cold.
Yeah, I think once you find a system you like,
They're
you
going to
stick
be
with it.
technically.
I don't think you need to upgrade every year or two, but I mean that being said, I like the 5D Mark IV just because it is. I do like the extra megapixels from the Sony, so and a better dynamic range. So but I think like you kind of say that when the Mark III came out, that's the camera I will. It's the only one I ever need.
Yeah.
And then several years later.
Oh yeah, that's good dynamic range if you're a landscaper is kind of good. You want to have that.
I'm not using filters so much these days as well, so I need that latitude.
So landscape, one question just occurs to me now, the obvious one, color, black and white. Where are you on that? It looks like from your site, color.
Most of the color, yeah, and traditionally it was always black and white if the colors doesn't work in the photo. And there's a couple of shots there. I did an aurora shot in black and white, and I thought because it's a composite image, and I just thought it gelled together better as black and white, and added an extra element that was interesting and not usually done. So so I do use it creatively, but not for the most part.
Right.
I admire it absolutely. It's fantastic. I mean, it definitely evokes a different emotion. So, and yourself, are you?
I probably, as a practical matter, I would mostly shoot in color, but I started with black and white.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm old enough, go back long enough to have had a view camera and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Done the Ansel Adams
cool.
course and all that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. That was pretty lucky.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I love to do that.
That was a great way to improve your photography, and not just from a technical standpoint, but from working with people who are very accomplished landscapers and looking at how they work, how they approach picture taking, and how they keep it fresh and that sort of stuff. So I'm always interested in how a photographer finds their way to breaking out of their own habits. But
I mean, in those days, I think trial and error is a large part of it, and trial and error with a film camera is a costly exercise.
Oh yeah, it's costly, it's very demanding, and
Ansel knew it anyway. He
was a highly grid of stuff. Right across.
So did he teach you the zone system?
Yeah, we got zone systems, and so which made a lot of sense with the materials, but also as a way of thinking about the tonal range and the image too. About managing that, because even with our current generation of sensors,
it's nothing.
We still, it's still our eyes capacity easily exceeds anything that we can reproduce. So photography still is about fitting the dynamic range into a narrow band.
And then so I tend to fit it into that narrow band and then extract it as much as possible.
Which Photoshop gives one just enormous.
So either through multiple exposures or filters help, or just I just do it anyway, even if it's quite a flat image.
So there's one of those questions that comes up again when you talk about Photoshop too, of course, is what's fair and what isn't? You know, how would you describe your limits on manipulation? What would you?
Other photographers force me beyond my level of comfort. I think. You don't have to push your limits or go past what you think is ethically right or wrong to be creative. It definitely helps, or for me, I struggle with the creativity side, and I think I make up for that with Photoshop. So
but that's just an extension of creativity.
It's extension, but I think you can still be very creative without having to resort to Photoshop. But I, for a long time, was kind of more edging on the purist side, and but now, I've become more comfortable in doing these things that cannot be spoken about.
I'm pretty relaxed about that. I like I just look at the image and say, does this work? Is this right for the image? And everything's a representation anyway. So unless you're purporting to be doing
absolutely
survey
I'm
work
not,
or
it's
something.
not reportage or like
reportage.
Yeah,
you'd say, well, that's out of line. But,
absolutely, and that's like just crazy that people do that. But and I find it interesting that the APAs are now awarded, they're judged, in two categories, the landscape. And is it valid? Like, if you're going to categorize it, would you then go to, this is shot in film? This is a stitch, or, where do you draw the line? I don't know. And the manipulation
possibilities now are so unbelievable. Content-aware fill or something.
Well, this photo I show you is like, I feel like it was a silver distinction, which is a good result. If it was in the single, if it wasn't judged as a composite, then it might have been judged differently. And I don't think it should take anything away from the image. I still walked into a lake of frozen water and ice in my underwear, so to deduct points off me, I feel hard done by.
It's one of those things that people have very strong feelings about, but I personally don't. I think that it's the image that you're working on. The image is its own thing.
And it's a process again.
And you're saying, how well does that reflect the photographer's reaction to what they saw? How good of an expression is there? How convincing is it? And those things. So it involves manipulation, or people just dodging out a light standard or something. Or cleaning up some rubbish that they don't want. I go, well, that's part of they're doing it. They're trying to express the spirit of something.
Absolutely, And I think I think some of these competitions, or what they draw the line at post processing and really cleaning up rubbish. I think that should be allowed, but no.
There isn't a right or wrong on this thing. I think it'll no doubt continue forever, this discussion.
Absolutely, Well, I don't say, some photographers, they say, it's how I saw it in my mind's eye or whatever, and I'm like, I don't even bother. It's not how I saw it at all. It's not, it's no reflection of what I saw. It's just, I've taken this and done something else with it. And,
turn it into a beautiful piece of work. I like it.
Don't need to justify it necessarily, but to some people you do.
There's that purism and that whole idea of photographer's record and so forth.
For the most part, my images are true to what I've seen, even to the point where I don't crop them. Like, they're straight out of the camera. They might have the horizon straightened, but I generally do not crop my images.
Right.
And they're processed from what the original raw. They might not, for the most part, they don't have any heavy editing. As far as image manipulation, for the most part.
Except where that's what you needed to do. Well, I should let me have a quick look and see if this is.
Hopefully this has been recording okay.
Oh, I hope it has. Yeah, says so. That's good.
Hopefully.
I've had. It's been over the years. I've had maybe one or two times when there was a glitch and I didn't have any recording.
Do you not want to stop it and then start it again in case it crashes?
Yeah, you could do that.